Remy here, welcome to Remy Media, and today we're going to be giving you my thoughts on Sword Art Online, as well as my critiques, and we're going to be going over the following criteria: plot development, character development, presentation, and voice acting. Afterwards, I'll give you my overall thoughts on the anime, as well as any gripes that really stick out to me, and afterwards I'll issue a final score. It's not going to be a numeric score, it's actually going to be one of these scores. Alright guys, these are my thoughts on Sword Art Online, so let's get started. SAO was written by Reki Kawahara and first published as a web novel back in 2001, however it did not air until July of 2012 on television when it was produced by A1 Pictures. Now I'm sure many of you have already watched Sword Art Online, or at least read the manga by this point, but if you haven't, the story goes as follows. In the year 2022, a virtual reality MMORPG called Sword Art Online is released to the public, and one of the very first characters we're introduced to is known as Kazuto Kirigaya, also known by his in-game avatar as Kirito. Kirito, being one of the beta testers of the game, starts off with a rather vast knowledge of the game mechanics and how to play and progress in the game. In one of the very first scenes, we see him training another character on how to play the basics. Kirito and his new friend Klein soon realize that there's no way to log out of the game. After this, they and every other character are transported to a large courtyard where they meet with the game's creator, Akihiko Kayaba. Kayaba reveals to the players that they have to beat the game in order to escape. If they are killed while playing the game, they die in real life, and if anyone tries to remove the nerve gear from the actual person wearing it, it will also kill them. After the announcement, Kirito and all the other players rush off to play the game. Now we have the plot, premise, and sense of urgency to begin the story. And this, unfortunately, is where Sword Art Online's potential begins to diminish. We'll get into the plot's development pretty soon, but first let's look at the characters. Most of the characters in SAO are distinguishable by appearance alone. As for personalities, most of the characters are dull and generic. Kirito is the loner who every girl falls in love with. Asuna makes for a strong female lead, but ends up getting sidelined for half the show. Kayaba, at least for half the series, is a slightly interesting but ultimately generic main villain. All the other side characters appear randomly throughout the show. And when it comes to character development, unfortunately SAO just doesn't provide too much development for any of the characters. When the series starts out, Kirito seems to be a solo player, and even if he is, most of the time we don't even get to see him soloing. In practically every episode we see Kirito playing with other characters. Ultimately, the series is focused on Kirito and Asuna's romantic relationship, which is probably not why a lot of people started watching the show in the first place. However, when it comes to developing the two, it's not that bad. However, it's not very impressive when it comes to developing a romance. Since Kirito and Asuna's relationship seems to be the main focus of the series, then it really plays into the plot development.
Cheap and sell cheap. That's my motto. I'm a businessman. You know that.
That's selling cheap parts a lie, though.
The plot starts off rather strong, giving us a life and death scenario in a video game setting. However, almost immediately after episode 1, we realize one of the biggest, most consistent issues with the entire show: the time skips. The time skips occur almost every episode, placing Kirito in a new area, meaning that very few episodes can actually be linked to each other. Typically, Kirito will always be at a much higher level than the previous episode, making any noticeable character development occur off-screen. This is the same for every other character as well, and this to me is mostly disappointing because I would prefer to watch Sword Art Online as an actual virtual reality MMO taking place and seeing this anime play out like a video game instead of just dealing with a romantic relationship. The whole plot is to go through the game, beat all the bosses, and beat the game. However, that premise seems to get lost in the midst of the relationship. Not to mention that the series is sliced in half, meaning that there's not really that many episodes containing Sword Art Online. About halfway through the series, we notice that the entire plot shifts to another video game. However, part 2 does actually have a much better pacing and doesn't include so many ridiculous time skips. Ultimately, when watching Sword Art Online, you're going to receive a rather generic plot and rather dull characters, with development being almost non-existent or all displayed off-screen. So really, the question is, why was Sword Art Online so popular? And this brings us to our next point.
The way you look like you're about to cry. I wish I could preserve it and hang it up on a wall.
Voice acting. The voice acting in SAO for the English dub was done very well. I really have no gripes in this area. Kirito is voiced by Bryce Papenbrook, who also voiced Ren from Blue Exorcist and is still voice acting for Eren Yeager in Attack on Titan. Obviously, Papenbrook's abilities are very impressive in SAO, especially when it comes to his battle cries or his screams. The other characters do a very good job, especially Asuna, who is voice acted by Tarami Lei, and I personally have no real gripes about any of the other characters' voice acting, except that unfortunately I don't feel like too much demand was put on them, especially considering the plot focuses mostly on Asuna and Kirito. Overall, the quality of the voice acting was very good, which brings us to our next point, presentation.
And I love you.
Presentation. The presentation of Sword Art Online is absolutely fantastic. The anime is beautiful, the drawings are legit, and the battle scenes are incredible. Just watching some of the fight scenes, it's honestly no surprise that SAO became such a popular anime. Combining voice acting with the amazing fight scenes, the beautiful artwork, and the concept of an MMORPG being brought into a virtual reality realm make for a very entertaining anime. Finally, this brings me to my overall thoughts on the anime.
Would you please tell me before we go?
Sword Art Online brings us a fun concept with generic protagonist, impressive voice acting, a beautiful world, and entertaining battle scenes. Unfortunately for me, this anime does fail to live up to its potential, at least the potential it started with. Littered with disengaging and hard to follow time skips, no real presence from the antagonist, and seemingly no strong push towards the final goal, SAO has a story that's hard to get invested in. Thankfully, the way it is brought to life in the anime, I was still interested in seeing what would come next. I only slightly enjoyed the romance aspect, though I would have preferred the story to focus more on playing through the game and building the world and the story around the original concept. Still though, I was entertained watching this anime. My thoughts can be summed up like this. SAO is fun to watch, and you don't really need to worry about cliffhangers. The artwork is beautiful and the fights are top notch, however the story is just not interesting. It focuses way too much on romance, has no consistency, and is ultimately wasted potential. My final score, based on my thoughts, is SAO, it's okay. It's certainly visually impressive, but I look for much more when it comes to animes or stories in general. That's it for today. If you agree or disagree with any of my thoughts, then leave a comment below and tell me what you thought about this episode. Tell me if you think that I was wrong, or if you thought I was right, or if you agree or disagree, whatever. Just leave a comment below, and if you enjoyed this video, just hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, my thoughts on anime, hit that subscribe button. Next time I'm going to be doing a video on Gurren Lagann, and if you know of any anime, or if there's a certain anime that you would like me to do in the future, just you can leave a comment below. Let me know what you would like me to do a video on. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.